I mean, I first played the game in 1994, and that game is the reason that I make games today. I have always viewed the original to be the perfect game. It's got the epic nature of the strategy layer, it's got the intimate nature of the combat game. At our studio, Xcom is a sacred title. I think we all have experiences with it, but mine goes back right to the beginning. And so that's the reason we're making this game, is because we just feel so strongly about it here. Garth, tell them about your first time playing the game.
Oh man, yes. So I come from a little bit of a different perspective than Jake. He is one of the, if not the greatest Xcom fan. And when I joined the company about 3 years ago, I'm a huge tactical fan, but I had yet to play Xcom. I played Final Fantasy Tactics, one of my favorite games of all time. You know, Battle for Westnoth, the Vandal Hearts series, stuff like that. But I never played this one, and Jake was like, "You have to play it. This is the greatest one."
Yes, so I was excited for him.
Yes,
I was excited to just have that first time again. So I was like a little schoolgirl.
Right. He was like, "It's the perfect game. Nothing's going to go wrong. You know, you like those other games. This is going to blow all of those into oblivion.
Your life will be changed."
Right. Right. So I'm prompted. You know, I had a little bit of hype for it, but I thought it was going to live up to it. I totally respected this guy.
Right.
And
no oversell whatsoever. Yeah.
But it certainly did. It was a phenomenal experience. But since it was only 3 years ago, it was certainly different than any other experience that I play with some more modern games. You know, I fire up the game. There's this cool image of a globe with about 12 different things to do, and I immediately think, okay, this game has some depth. I will dig into it. I will peel off the layers at my own pace, but I wanted to get into combat. So Jake helped me get there. Wanted to check out the tactical gameplay. It was super cool. I already could load out individual guys, move them off the Sky Ranger, and my first 4 moves during my turn, these green blobs come flying out of the fog of war during my turn and kill 4 guys in a row.
I know. It was awesome. I was very happy for him, because I said, now that's XCOM. Is that not the greatest game you've ever played?
So after
Go ahead, the fans are listening. Is that not the greatest game you've ever played?
After many hours of gameplay, yes, I succumbed. It is one of the best strategy games ever. It certainly has its own charm and magic that it can get away with that type of brutality, and it's part of the charm of that game. You know, people, you say before, you asked 15 different XCOM fans, you had 15 different stories about what they love about it, but doing my research on some of the hardcore fans, everyone seems to embrace that difficulty and that permanent challenge, that permadeath.
Yeah, challenge is a key to the original game. So and the original game was unforgiving in the amount of challenge that it had, but those kinds of games have a renaissance now, which I think is really cool to see. You know, whether it's Dwarf Fortress or Minecraft or even Demon's Souls, things like that, challenge is having a bit of a renaissance in games. And so that's kind of exciting to see, because in the original, when people play it now, they do think, geez, that game is brutal. But I think that it also, because of that, succeeding at XCOM was really succeeding. You earned your successes in that game. And so, I think that's part of the appeal to it too.
My favorite part was when I was playing it, I had started at Microprose in '95, and I started, you get all the back catalog games were there, and it wasn't long after that I hadn't played it till they were working on Apocalypse, and I remember seeing that, and I was like, wow, that looks really cool. 640 by 480, that was a big step then. and so I dug into XCOM, and the coolest part about that was, I'd love taking my rookies, and they were just cannon fodder. They would go find the aliens and just get blown to bits.
Yeah, you build success
exactly.
off the bodies of the weak.
Yes, exactly. So I would save my precious few soldiers, and the ones that the new rookies, you're going out to die. And if you live, then maybe I'll keep you. And so I would do that nonstop.
Yeah,
that's the best part about it.
It was great. It was, that game is about Darwinism. It's like gaming Darwinism, because you would find out really quickly which of your soldiers were not properly equipped with the mental fortitude to hold a rocket launcher. So they would panic in the worst situations, or the guys who were who could get psionically captured, the aliens would go for the same guys over and over, the mentally, the guys who dribbled out of their mouth and stuff like that. And you would bring them, because you could basically push them in front of the aliens and say, this guy, go for this guy. I'll just give him a pistol. You pick on this guy here, and then your heroes would come in behind them. So.
Well, even now with how even with as low res as it is, when an alien materializes out of the fog,
Oh,
that
yeah.
is some creepy shit.
Yeah.
Like that is stuff that just absolutely is, even at the resolution it's at, it's still, playing it now, I'm like, oh my God, there's a sectoid there. You know, like
it is.
Freaks me out.
That's the iconic moment. You got the farm, you've got cabbages. Who knew cabbages were such a bumper crop in 1994? But you have these cabbages and orchards, and like you would have this fog of war, and you would just see them. You have that beautiful like Tangerine Dream type like scary ambient music, and then at the edge of the fog you have those like glinting eyes, and you just see that little red box down in the corner, and you just know you've moved past your limit, and now you're going to get shot. That's just like an iconic moment. I mean, just the sound of that music affects people. Yeah.
That was really interesting to me too, having more of a console background, but the sense of dread that those original games captured. The permadeath is a big part of that, because your guys are at risk at all times. So of course, that's going to be a dreadful moment. But the fog of war, barely seeing the aliens, and trying to get that sense of, I love survival horror games, but trying to get that sense of horror and a little bit of a fear factor in a turn-based tactical game, to me was awesome that they pulled that off somehow.
Yeah. I mean, to this day, I mean, I think that like that's XCOM, the original game, has a soul. Like that's what I say a lot of times. Like that original game has a real soul to it. You have those experiences where it just really, really affects you, and they do that with so little tools at their disposal.
It transcends the tech.
Absolutely.
That's the thing. It's you're looking at something that's completely low res, and you really can't see what it is. And I mean, by today's standards, of course. But yet it's still, it goes beyond that, and it can scare you, and it can. The mood to achieve that, what they did with such a limited amount of stuff, is just really amazing.
Yeah, I'm still in awe with that. They had like 3-4 guys, and we've got like 50 something, and yeah, no, I mean, I think there's that, and then in addition to that, again, just that sort of high stakes. The fact that they do permadeath, like it adds another layer of the top where they're not going to hold your hand, and like success is earned. And those really, really high stakes, like you learn to be very, very careful with your soldiers. You form these really close attachments to them. And even the terrible soldiers you form attachments to, because it's the guy who he's never killed an alien, he panics all the time, and it's this, I don't know, he's one of your French soldiers, and you just form this sort of connection with him where you're like, I'm going to take this guy, I'm going to make this guy make it to the final mission.
Yeah, and that was another element to my first time, though. Speaking of the 4 guys that died right away, I named them all after members of my family, having no idea that they would die immediately. I was hoping, great, I'm going to go save the world from an alien invasion with myself, my best friend, my college roommate, and my dad. Right. And the 4 of us died immediately.
Your father died in front of you. Yeah. How was that?
So hang off on naming.
It was terrible.
Your soldiers.
We didn't make your top 4 list.
Yeah.
Oh, this was before we we dug deep together.
So when we first started on the project, Greg and his artist, they all got bundled into a room together. It was a small group, and they all about this size. Got bundled into this room together for months, right?
4 months.
Yeah, that room smelled terrible. Yeah. And every other Friday we would play the original game, because again, for our team, if you're going to make this game, we have to have buy-in. You have to play it, and we wanted that validation to make sure that modern gamers can still play that original game and say, wow, there is really something here. This is really special. And so Greg put his team in the room together, would close the doors, and then every other Friday I would come in and sort of guide them through their first process. They would be reborn into the world as new Xcomers.
I think that was really helpful too, because we saw the difficulties they had. Like where did they stumble?
Yep.
What did we want to avoid?
But it was awesome because members of the team who had never played the game before, they would continue to play on their own. We would talk about hardcore things, and they would know what we're talking about because they would continue to play that game. They would get addicted to it. And for us, that was really exciting. I mean, because you never know how people are going to react to a game that was at that point 15 years old.
Nice validation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was.
I think one of the big things that the hurdles was just the UI and getting into the game. And once you got into it, you were fine. But getting past the geoscape.
Are you saying that game doesn't have fantastic UI?
There's only so much you can do with the resolution they had.
That's true.
Is that the good answer? No, starting in the geoscape made life a little hard for some people the first time through.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, things have evolved. But yeah, I mean, I think that first step of you're put into the game, and in the original you put in the game, and then it's like, okay, go out, save the world. And then I think it was hard for people to say like, well, what do I do? You know, and so once we got them over that, then I think once people knew how to operate in that space, that's when they get addicted to it. The thing that we had to keep was again, just that feeling. Like people would play combat and people would be screaming and people would be yelling and people would be calling people over because of those moments that were just, it is amazing what the original game was able to achieve just with destructible environments. It created combat that was always different, and you would get these crazy experiences where you shoot through the windows of 2 houses across the map to hit the guy, and those are the sorts of things that people just really, really attached to. I mean, when we saw that kind of stuff, again, it was validation, but it was also, hey, we've got to keep that stuff. Like, we've got to work to make sure those elements still work in our game. I mean, it's interesting. I do still play the original game. I have to. I mean, I must continue to play the original game to continue to be inspired and make sure that the original source material still resonates with what we're doing. I have a very, very deep respect now for what they did with that game, because you can play a game you can play for hundreds of hours, but now we've started to basically like take it apart behind the scenes. You know, you rip off an arm, you start to reattach a leg, and then you try to put shit back together again, and you're like, oh boy. And so, I mean, that's what we've tried to do, and because of that, we see the original game, and I just think that it gives us like a deeper respect for what they did.
The scope is amazing.
Yeah.
And guys still, I mean, a lot of guys still play the original all the time.
Yep. The original XCOM is in our DNA. I mean, we have a lot of former micropros guys. I mean, we're sort of from the ashes of micropros, and we feel a very strong tie to those games. You know, we feel a stewardship about bringing those games into the modern era. And there are a lot of people around here who were around when that game was being made, and there are a lot of people who, because of the games we make, like, those games are holy to us. I mean, there are a lot of people who feel very, very strong about XCOM, and it's great. Yeah, and it's great because we know that there's nothing anybody can throw at us outside these walls about XCOM that we did not hear first. That we have those very, very passionate discussions about what XCOM is, what it should be, and that's because we have so many guys at the company who feel so strongly about it. I mean, you can't throw a stick without hitting a hardcore XCOM fan around here. So. That's
great for feedback and to validate the decisions you make sometimes too. Someone who's not on the project, who's in the company, and you say, hey, this is what a sectoid looks like, and they're like, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And so it makes you feel like they know what you're talking about, and if they respond favorably to it, you know that you're probably going to get a fairly favorable response, hopefully outside of the studio.
Yep, that's right. They've always been our sort of bellwether. We've been able to use them as our thermometer to say like, okay, we're still on the right track.